Welcome back, Night Wanderer. Tonight, you're slipping quietly into a chapter of history they definitely forgot to teach in school. By the way, if you were actually there, you'd probably have been arrested, eaten badly preserved fish, or caught something unpleasant. But don't worry, tonight you're only here in spirit. Before we set off, do that slow scroll to like and subscribe, but only if these sleepy little time loops are your thing. And tell me where in the world you're watching from, and what time your clock says. It's strangely comforting knowing who else is still up. Now, lights low, maybe grab a blanket, or let your ceiling fan hum away in the background. Time to drift gently back, one step at a time. You wake up to the sound of heavy breathing, not your own. Not in a cute way. Someone, likely 12, but built like a malnourished satyr, has draped their leg across your ribs during the night. It's unclear whether it was for warmth or dominance. You try not to think about it. The floor beneath your back is straw over hard-packed dirt, slightly damp from last night's dew or possibly someone's unresolved bladder situation. Either way, it's cold. Spartan cold. That is, the kind of cold that doesn't just bite, it judges you for flinching. The kind of cold that's considered educational. Your bed is a burlap sack stuffed with twigs and 3 unwashed tunics that may or may not have been used in combat training yesterday. It smells of sweat, river mud, and something that might be goat-related. If it's not the goat, then it's one of your bunkmates. There are 7 of them in this barracks. Boys age 7 to 11. You are 10, which means you are somewhere between hit often and expected to hit others. Above you, the ceiling is wooden, rough-hewn, barely sealed, and home to an ambitious colony of spiders with no fear of children. Occasionally, one dangles over your face while you sleep. You are not allowed to scream. You are expected to practice mental discipline, which is Spartan for die quietly, if necessary. The room smells like childhood trauma, pine smoke, and unwashed boy. You try to move, but your left arm has gone numb from being used as a pillow by the boy next to you. His name is probably Lysandros. All of them are named Lysandros, or Nicandros. There are only 4 approved names, and no one has had an original thought about it since the last festival sacrifice. You shift your weight and try to sit up. Your joints crack. Loudly. It's not because you're old, you're 10. It's because your body has been used as a training dummy for 3 consecutive days. Your shoulder is purple. You think it might have been the ceremonial staff beating from yesterday, or maybe just the normal, non-ceremonial one you earned by blinking too slowly during morning chants. The sun is just beginning to bleed its first light through the slats of the barracks wall. Outside, roosters crow. Inside, boys snore. One of them is clutching a wooden sword in his sleep. Another has been quietly whispering battle oaths in his dreams for the last 30 minutes. The oaths are not encouraging. And then you hear the thud. That's the signal. Not a horn. Not a bell. Just the heavy wooden door swinging open and colliding with the wall, hard enough to shake a spider loose onto someone's tunic. You feel the entire barracks inhale sharply. Then hold its breath. In steps your trainer. A man in his late 30s who hasn't smiled since before your birth, and doesn't intend to break that streak today. He wears a simple red cloak and the expression of someone perpetually disappointed with your posture. You are expected to rise immediately. You do not rise immediately. You try. But your cloak is twisted around your legs, your spine protests, and the floor is a slippery mess of straw, spilled water, and vengeance. You stand anyway, because that's what Spartans do. Except you're not really a Spartan, not yet. You are agoge, a trainee, a future maybe warrior, maybe corpse, depending on how fast you learn to dodge. You line up at the end of your straw mat. The air is cold. Your toes are bare. The floor is unforgiving. Your stomach growls, not in anticipation, but in protest. It already knows breakfast is going to be spiritual, not nutritional. The trainer walks down the line. He nods at the tall kid with the broken nose, a gift from his cousin, and scowls at the boy who failed to sharpen his practice spear last night. The punishment will be swift, nonsensical, and somehow educational. You're next. You lower your gaze slightly, not too much. Just enough to show respect, but not enough to imply weakness. Spartan manners are an intricate dance of threat assessment and emotional constipation. He pauses. He looks at your left shoulder, still swollen. His mouth twitches, not in sympathy, in calculation. That bruise will slow you down during drills. But slowing down is part of learning. He moves on. You exhale. Outside, the cold air waits like a slap. Soon, you'll be running barefoot through thorny fields. Drilling combat formations with boys who haven't eaten properly in days. Dodging rocks. Throwing them back. Reciting war poetry while someone tries to trip you. But for now, just for this moment, you're upright. Breathing, intact. You don't know what day it is. Sparta doesn't care. There are no calendars here. Only rituals, pain, and the distant promise that one day, if you survive, you will be deemed worthy of even harsher expectations. You step outside with the others. The sun is fully awake now, and it shines down with the same warmth and affection as your instructors. None. The day has begun, and it's already tired of you. You begin your day the same way any self-respecting 10-year-old would in Sparta, with a sharp kick to the ribs and a reminder that your personal comfort is both irrelevant and suspicious. You're lucky. Yesterday, it was a bucket of water to the face, not warm water, certainly not scented, just something recently fetched from the same stream in which everyone washes, urinates, and possibly sacrifices poultry. The kick is delivered by a boy barely older than you, known for his bad aim with javelins and excellent aim with feet. You don't complain. You sit up, blink into the smoky air, and begin mentally cataloging which of your limbs still function. Today, it's at least 3 out of 4, a triumph. The fire pit in the middle of the barracks has gone out sometime in the night, leaving behind only a bed of embers and the scent of scorched goat hair. That smell is coming from the hem of someone's cloak. You don't mention it. If they notice, they'll learn. If they don't, well, the cloak was mostly holes anyway. Outside, the roosters have declared war on the sunrise. Their cries are desperate, guttural, and absurdly loud. Inside, the boys begin the sacred shuffle, stretching limbs, wiping drool, punching one another lightly in the shoulder as a greeting. A ritual of tenderness, Spartan style. You wrap yourself in your himation, the one, singular, universally issued cloak that functions as your blanket, coat, towel, and in colder moments, emotional support object. It hasn't been washed in months. It smells like training and fear. You step outside barefoot, always barefoot. Shoes are for cowards and Athenians. The earth is cold, the ground packed with dirt, gravel, and cruel little stones shaped like lessons. You've developed calluses, thick ones, but the sharp pebbles always find the fresh skin anyway. They have a gift for it. A line has formed. You join it. Each boy steps forward one at a time to splash water onto their face from a communal basin. It's not even a basin. It's a carved-out chunk of limestone that collects rain and opinions about your resilience. You splash your face. It doesn't wake you up. It just makes you wet. Nearby, an elder watches. He's one of the instructors. Possibly once a warrior, now rebranded as a sadist with a pension. His gaze is like a hawk with a grudge. He does not blink. He counts everything. Who flinches, who stumbles, who wipes their nose without permission. Next is the first chant of the day. You line up, arms at your sides, shoulders back. Someone leads the group in a morning recitation, not of poetry or philosophy, but of state-mandated declarations of loyalty. It's like the Pledge of Allegiance if it had more references to stabbing. You speak in unison. I belong to Sparta. I fear no pain. I eat what is given. I strike what must be struck. There's more, but your brain is still processing the foot to the ribs. After chanting, you move to the courtyard, where the morning inspection begins. The trainer walks past each boy, looking for posture errors, lazy eyes, or cloaks worn too high on the shoulders. There are no mirrors in Sparta, only judgment. One boy has a tear in his cloak. It wasn't there yesterday. The trainer stops in front of him. Explain, he says. The boy hesitates. That's mistake number 1. I caught it on a rock during drills, he mutters. Mistake number 2. Admitting weakness. The trainer nods thoughtfully. Then he gestures. 2 older boys step forward, and the offending child is given a lesson in fabric responsibility, involving a short sprint, a tripwire, and a stern reminder about cloak care via rapid physical contact with the earth. You all watch. You are expected to. Once it's over, the beaten boy returns to line. No one says anything. His tear is slightly larger now, but his posture has improved. You perform stretches. Spartan stretches are less about flexibility and more about identifying your least compliant joints and punishing them. Touch your toes, twist your torso, hold your breath until your vision sparkles. These are the rituals. This is how discipline enters the body, one unpleasant inch at a time. Someone sneezes. Not you, mercifully, but someone. The elder turns. Sick, he asks. The boy nods slightly. His nose is running. He looks pale. The elder nods too, then tells him to run 10 laps and shout declarations of strength with each one. Health is a choice, they say in Sparta. So is dying. Your stomach growls. You pretend it didn't. Hunger is part of the curriculum. Now it's time for the morning inspection of weapon form. Each boy is handed a practice sword. Wooden, worn smooth by years of teenage violence. You're told to recite stances, move through positions, and hold a basic guard. Your arms shake a little. The sword is heavier than it looks. The instructor walks past. He presses a finger against your elbow, pushing it down slightly. Too high, he murmurs. You'll lose it in battle. You nod. You won't correct it. Not again. Your wrist still remembers the last time. A bell chimes from the temple, not a friendly one. It sounds like a goat being strangled. It means it's time to begin the drills. But before that, one last ritual, the quiet kneel. You all drop to one knee, press fists to the ground, and whisper thanks to Ares for waking you. You do not thank him for anything else, just for the privilege of surviving the night without being stolen by illness, scorpions, or the occasional wolf that slips past the outer guards. You stand. The morning ritual is complete, and you are officially awake, which means your suffering may now begin in earnest. You live in a building that cannot decide if it is a home, a training pit, or a philosophical statement about austerity. It is all of those things and none. The architecture is minimalist in the same way that starvation is minimalist. It leaves little room for indulgence and even less for furniture. Your barracks, known affectionately as the Secession, is shared with half a dozen other boys, give or take one who may have been promoted or left behind after losing an argument with gravity during a climbing lesson. The floor is dirt. The walls are unplastered stone. There are wooden beams, but they creak with every gust of wind and protest with the weight of whatever damp mold clings to their underside. There are no beds, just straw, lots of it, sometimes fresh, sometimes full of bugs, always a little itchy. You've stopped asking what crawls in and out of it at night. Denial is its own form of hygiene in Sparta. The air inside the barracks is dense, not with warmth, but with the collective sweat of unbathed boys, smoke from last night's cook fire, and the smell of old wool cloaks that have absorbed more sorrow than sun. You've learned to breathe shallowly, not because it helps, but because it's the only way to avoid triggering a gag reflex during morning drills. Lighting is limited to whatever filters through the gaps in the stonework or from the fire pit, which is more smoke than flame. The hearth is low and misanthropic. It rarely works when you need it to, and crackles mockingly when it does. Now let's talk hygiene, or as Spartans call it, combat with dirt. There is no soap. There is no towel. There is only sand, spit, and shame. You wash in a communal river, naked and surrounded by other boys, none of whom have developed the concept of personal space. The water is cold year-round and filled with things that wiggle. Sometimes someone finds a leech. They're expected to just keep going. Leeches test the spirit, says your instructor. You're not sure what part of the spirit is being tested, but yours feels increasingly violated. Teeth are cleaned with twigs, or sometimes not at all. Dental care is measured in the number of molars you can still chew with, not whether your breath would pass muster at a symposium. Bad breath is considered a tactical advantage. It distracts your opponent. Your hair, or what remains of it, is short, cropped, coarse, and perpetually dirty. You wash it with river water and occasionally rub ash into your scalp to kill lice. It doesn't kill them. It just makes them angry and slightly more theatrical. You are always itchy. Always. Lice are not considered pests here. They are considered training partners. If you can withstand their nibbling, you can withstand anything. That's the logic anyway. No one has ever actually completed this course of logic without scratching a raw patch into their arm. You scratch anyway, constantly, quietly, with the practiced shame of someone who's been told that discomfort is the forge in which heroes are made. You're pretty sure it's just a rash. There are no latrines. Nature is your latrine. Behind the barracks, near the olive trees, is a well-trodden path marked by suspiciously flattened grass and the faint smell of regret. You go there with haste and hope. If you're lucky, you'll have a moment of peace. If you're unlucky, someone else will already be there, chanting war cries to intimidate their bowels into cooperation. Toilet paper? No. Moss, if you're lucky. Smooth stones, if you're daring. Your hand, if you've already given up on dignity, which is usually by the third week. There is no privacy, not for bodily functions, not for your thoughts, not for your secrets. The walls have ears, mostly literal, thanks to the boy who lost his footing near the spear rack. You've never known solitude. You've never known a clean towel. You've never known a room without someone either weeping silently or boasting loudly about a wound that may or may not be infected. And yet, in Sparta, this is a form of love. If they didn't care, they wouldn't have put you in such a stimulating environment for character growth. Or so you've been told. Now let's talk about hazing. It's not called hazing, it's called instruction through adversity. Older boys test younger ones by surprise. Sometimes this means a slap. Sometimes this means a rock hidden under your straw mat. Sometimes it's being sent out at night with only a stick and the vague instruction to prove yourself. Last week, a boy came back with a dead fox. The week before, one came back with frostbite. The week before that, someone didn't come back. They say he's training in the hills now. No one asks which hills. The instructors smile at this, not visibly, not with their mouths, but with their slightly less hostile silence. You are told these trials prepare you for adulthood. You are told that adulthood is war. You are not told what happens if you pass all the trials. That's because the reward is more trials. And more hygiene rituals involving ash, oil scrapes, and exactly 0 hugs. Sometimes you dream of clean sheets, not because you've ever had them, but because the other boys whisper about them like myths. Some say the Athenians have them, some say the Persians have them. Everyone agrees it sounds suspiciously soft. In Sparta, softness is a sin. So you scratch your lice, squat near a tree, and splash your body with river water that's colder than your trainer's eyes. You dry off with your cloak. It's still damp from yesterday's storm. Congratulations, you're clean. Now go lift something heavy until your muscles scream. It's character building. Let's be clear. Breakfast in Sparta isn't about flavor, enjoyment, or nourishment. It's a grim ritual of caloric necessity wrapped in culinary despair. It is the beginning of your day's suffering, made edible. You sit cross-legged on the cold stone floor with the other boys. There are no bowls, no plates, no utensils. The communal food is dumped into a large clay basin with the enthusiasm of someone emptying a mop bucket. A wooden ladle is used to stir it, more as a symbolic gesture than a functional one. The ladle itself looks like it was carved by someone who hated trees. Your trainer calls it melos zomos, or black broth. But calling it broth is an act of optimism. It is a liquid, yes. It is dark, certainly, but soup implies warmth and welcome. This is more like a fluid punch in the digestive system. The ingredients are not a secret. In fact, they are shouted at you by your peers as you eat. Part educational, there's a part psychological warfare. Boiled pig's blood, one boy chirps as if announcing dessert. Vinegar, another adds, grinning. Salt and animal fat, someone roars, just before slurping. They forgot the part about despair. It's not listed, but it's there. You can taste it in every gulp. You pick up your hunk of barley bread, rough, dense, and shaped like a punishment. It's stale, always. Not old enough to crumble, just aged perfectly into a chewable weapon. Barley is the grain of the Spartan soul, resilient, joyless, vaguely resentful. You dip the bread into the black broth, it doesn't soften. You chew anyway. Your jaw protests. The bread wins. There's also cheese, if you can call it that. It's goat cheese, cured to a level that suggests vengeance rather than aging. Crumbly, sharp, and likely carried in someone's pouch for several days. You eat it because it's here, and in Sparta, food is rarely here without cost. There's no fruit, no vegetables. Those are for festivals or conquered people. Occasionally, if the gods are distracted or someone's father bribed the cooks, a bit of olive paste will appear. It's met with awe and suspicion. Why is it here? What does it want? You eat it anyway, quickly, before the trainers change their minds. A thin boy across from you retches slightly after his first sip of broth. No one helps him. He is corrected with a slap and a whispered warning. If you waste food, you eat dirt. He eats the broth, eyes closed, cheeks trembling. Protein is rare unless it's found in the form of a boiled egg or questionable sausage. You're never sure what kind of meat it is. Asking invites trouble. Silence is survival. Chew first, pray later. You eat quietly, surrounded by the wet sounds of other boys pretending this is normal, pretending that taste is irrelevant, that chewing is optional, that survival is elegant when done without facial expressions. Then comes the entertainment. Each morning a boy is chosen to steal extra food. Not for fun, not for mischief. As training, he must attempt to take a second hunk of bread or dip his ladle twice, all under the gaze of instructors who are specifically watching for him. If he fails, he is beaten. If he succeeds, he shares it with his peers, and is still beaten later, because stealth is its own reward. You were chosen last week. You still walk with a limp. Still, you eat. Because hunger in Sparta is like air. Constant, invisible, crushing. You've heard rumors that other city-states eat figs in the morning, that they drizzle honey on porridge, that their bread is soft and bread-shaped. These sound like myths. Beautiful, dangerous myths designed to weaken your soul. Food here isn't a pleasure. It's a battlefield. Your spoon is a truce. Your teeth are your only allies. You finish the broth. Your mouth tingles with salt and regret. You lick your fingers, more out of reflex than satisfaction. The taste stays with you like an unwanted memory. The clay basin is removed. The ladle is wiped with someone's cloak. There is no dessert. There is no concept of dessert. The meal ends the same way every Spartan gathering ends, with silence, a stare from the instructor, and the unspoken threat of physical correction. You rise. You're not full. That's never the goal. Hunger is seen as motivational. Full bellies lead to soft warriors. Your stomach aches. Your hands shake slightly from the cold, the effort of chewing, or possibly the slow onset of malnutrition. But you are ready. Not nourished. Not satisfied. Just ready. Which in Sparta is the same thing as living. Dressing, in Sparta, is less about style and more about sending a message. And the message is, I'm uncomfortable, probably cold, and ready to fight something. You wake in the straw, brush off the beetle that's decided your chest is a runway, and reach for your chiton, the singular garment that will carry you through the entire day and possibly the entire season. It is a rectangle of coarse wool, pinned at one shoulder with a crude brooch that looks like it was forged by someone who had never heard of comfort or human anatomy. There are no socks. There is no undergarment. There is only this wool sack. It itches. It always itches. You've grown used to the sensation, like 1,000 invisible ants performing synchronized marches across your back and inner thighs. You wrap it around you with the practiced shuffle of a boy who has done this every morning since he could walk. There is no mirror, not that you'd want one. The reflection would simply remind you of your patchy haircut, your inflamed insect bites, and the growing impression that you're aging backwards into some kind of mossy creature. The chiton hangs awkwardly. There is no tailoring, no symmetry. It droops on one side and rides high on the other, creating the silhouette of a half-deflated scarecrow. This is by design. If fashion were encouraged, vanity might follow, and vanity to the Spartans is the gateway drug to not dying in battle for the state. Some boys wear Himation cloaks, but only in winter, and even then only under protest. Cold, in Sparta, is another form of education. If you shiver, that's your weakness escaping. If you don't, you get frostbite. Either way, the state wins. Now the footwear, sandals, and not just any sandals. These are strips of leather, looped around your feet and calves in a way that is theoretically supportive, but practically painful. The soles are hard, the straps are stiff. One of them is tied with a vine because leather is expensive and creativity is mandatory. You step into them, wincing as yesterday's blister meets today's expectation. The left sandal has a small pebble embedded in it. Again, you try to remove it. You fail. It becomes part of your journey now. There are no shoelaces, just knots. Knots that loosen with every step and need retying constantly. By the end of the day, your legs look like they've been decorated by a drunken spider. If your chiton is torn, you keep wearing it. If it's blood-stained, you're congratulated. If it's missing entirely, you train naked, which is both a punishment and a motivational technique, depending on how cold the wind is that morning. There are no belts. Your waistline is determined by how tightly you can wrap your own arms. If the chiton falls off during drills, you are not excused. You are mocked. Mercilessly, by your peers, your trainer, and possibly a passing goat. Jewelry? Not unless you count a rope bracelet used to tie your eating knife to your wrist. It smells like old onions and iron. You wear it with pride. Your hair, if you have any left, is unstyled. The longer boys, those who've survived enough years, might grow it out in braids or ponytails, but for you, it's still the standard mess of rough shears and scalp brush. You once asked about combs. The older boy just laughed and handed you a stick. The stick broke. There is no perfume. The smell of unwashed bodies is the default cologne here. If someone smells clean, it usually means they've just returned from a swim or are about to die. Your skin is layered: dirt, sweat, oil, and ash. You wear them like badges. No one exfoliates. The last boy who tried to scrub himself with river stones ended up looking like he'd been attacked by angry oysters. And yet, this is your uniform. This is the armor of your youth. This, to the Spartan mind, is elegance, minimalist, utilitarian, designed to strip away individuality, choice, and any temptation toward pleasure. You once heard that in Athens, boys wear linen tunics, that they oil their hair and wear sandals with actual padding, that they care about colors, that they bathe with soap. You've never been to Athens, but you've learned to hate it, instinctively. Now fully dressed, meaning you are covered from collarbone to shin in brown wool and possibly mold, you prepare for inspection. The trainer looks at you. He squints. He frowns. He grunts. This is the highest compliment you'll receive today. Then he gestures toward the training yard with a crooked finger and mutters, "Go prove your clothing was worth wasting the fabric." You jog toward the drills. Your sandal thwacks against the stone. Your chiton flaps like a disgruntled flag. You are ready, not warm, not clean, but Spartan. And that, in this world, is all that matters. The word play doesn't exist in Spartan vocabulary the way you hope it might. What other Greek boys in other city-states might call play, running games, wrestling matches, stone-tossing contests, here is simply called training. And training is work. And work is life. And life, if you haven't gathered by now, is more of an obstacle course designed by bitter ghosts than anything remotely joyful. You rise before the sun, fueled by black broth and an unspoken understanding that if you lag behind, someone will throw a javelin your way. Not out of cruelty, out of love. Spartan love, which is indistinguishable from bullying, injury, and high expectations. The training yard is a space of packed earth surrounded by stones. No lush grass, no shade. Just sun, dust, and the occasional beetle committing suicide under a sandal. Your first task of the day is running. You run in circles. You run straight lines. You run uphill. You run while shouting. You run while carrying rocks. You run until you vomit. Then you run with the hope of outrunning your vomit. The trainer shouts commands in clipped Dorian Greek. You don't understand half of them. It doesn't matter. Understanding is optional. Obedience is not. You carry logs, you lift them above your head. You hold them until your shoulders scream. Then someone slaps you for screaming. You hold the log longer. The pain is a teacher. The log is your exam. You fail. You always fail. That's the point. Then comes the wrestling. It's not the theatrical kind. No soft mats, no rules. Just boys colliding like angry goats, slamming each other into the earth until someone taps out, passes out, or loses a tooth. Sometimes all three. You're thrown by a boy named Cleon. He's broader than you, meaner than you, and has a chin like a warhammer. He grins while pinning you. His teeth are yellow and uneven. His breath smells like dried meat and ego. You black out briefly under his armpit. When you wake, you are congratulated for lasting longer than yesterday. You try not to be proud of this, but part of you is. You've learned that even fainting is better than crying. Then the stick fighting. Each boy is given a staff. No instruction, just the command. Prove you deserve dinner. You swing, you parry, you get hit across the shins, then the cheek, then somewhere deeply personal. You cry out, you are hit again for crying out. The trainer watches, arms crossed. He nods slowly. Not because you're doing well, but because you're still standing. There are injuries, bloody noses, split lips. One boy dislocates his shoulder and is ordered to pop it back in against a wall. He does. Then he is told to keep training. Pain is not an excuse. Pain is punctuation in the sentence of your life. The work continues. You dig trenches, you fill them again, you chop wood, you carry the logs back uphill, you sharpen sticks, you dull them again in mock combat. You chase chickens, you clean goat stalls with your bare hands and the unspoken prayer that you'll catch a break. and maybe only step in the dry kind of goat mess. You don't. The goat is laughing, silently. You feel it. There are moments where the sun feels like a punishment, where the dust becomes part of your skin. Your sweat becomes a river of salt and shame. Your muscles tremble. Your vision sways. Someone whispers, "Don't faint. They'll make you fight the dogs if you faint." You don't know if that's true, but you stay upright. Lunch is more broth. There is no break, only a change in tasks. You are assigned to help prepare the training spears. They are crude, weighted, and designed to break on impact. But they often don't. One boy loses a tooth. Another gains a limp. Everyone gains character, or at least trauma masquerading as character. You practice formation drills. The phalanx, shoulder to shoulder, shield to shield. Except you have no shields. So you hold large woven baskets and pretend. When one boy breaks formation, he is pulled out, whipped, and told he's now responsible for carrying rocks on his head until dinner. No one speaks. You are constantly watched. Not just by the trainers, but by older boys, Irenes, who serve as enforcers of Spartan discipline. They correct with kicks. They motivate with threats. One of them winks at you after tripping you into the mud. This is considered mentorship. You scrub your tunic in the river at dusk, not to clean it, nothing can clean it, but to remove the bloodstains visible to the instructor. You succeed. Mostly. The day ends with recitation of laws. Not poems, not myths. Laws, memorized, repeated in unison. If you forget one, extra drills. If you remember all, no reward. The reward is not being punished. You stumble back to your quarters under the darkening sky. The stars above are cold and impersonal. One of them winks. You decide it's the ghost of a boy who failed yesterday's stick drill. You lay down on the hard ground, muscles twitching, knees sore, your left eye swollen. You whisper, "I made it." No one hears you, not even the gods, especially not the gods. Work in Sparta never ends. It only pauses until you're strong enough to survive it again. Let's say, just hypothetically, that you survive your morning beatings, your noontime blisters, your dusk sprints through thorn bushes, and your accidental headbutt during formation practice. Let's say you only come away from your heroic little Spartan day with a mildly broken finger, a suspicious gash above your eyebrow, and a cough that's more wet than dry. You'd think it's time for a physician. You'd be wrong. There are no real doctors for you. You're a Spartan schoolboy. Medicine, as far as your trainers are concerned, is a crutch for the weak. If you're sick, the first course of treatment is denial. The second is sweat. The third is being left alone in a corner until you either recover or don't. You try to hide your limp. Unfortunately, you can't hide the fever. You start to shiver during drills. You vomit during log carrying. One of the Aryans notices. He jabs your ribs with a staff and says, "Stop pretending you're ill unless you want to be." Pretending? Yes, of course. Just role-playing as a child with pneumonia. Eventually, you're dragged, not to a healer, but to the local iatros, a man whose credentials are mostly based on owning a bronze knife and having once watched a goat recover from being gored. His workspace is a stone slab, a rust-colored bowl, and a selection of tools that resemble gardening equipment from your nightmares. There's a hook, a spike, something that looks like half a spoon. Everything smells like vinegar, sweat, and old lamb. The iatros examines your swollen finger. He mutters something about imbalanced humors and begins mixing crushed figs, olive oil, and what you're fairly certain is dirt. This paste is smeared on the injury, then bound with rough cloth. No anesthesia, no sterilization, just pain and the sound of your own regret. He turns to your cough, listens to your wheezing. He smiles, a smile that suggests he sees a business opportunity. He prescribes boiled garlic in goat milk, followed by chanting to Asclepius. If that fails, he offers to bleed you. You decline. He shrugs. Weakness is curable with discomfort, he insists. There's a boy next to you with an eye infection. He has been told to hold a hot onion to his temple. Another has a toothache. His treatment is to chew on leather and pray that the tooth falls out before the fever reaches his brain. No one gets stitches. Wounds are cauterized with heated bronze. You hear a scream in the next room, the kind that rattles something loose in your spine. Someone mutters, "It's just a thigh gash." You consider pretending to be healthy. Forever. Bleeding is the universal solution to everything. Headache? Bleed. Nausea? Bleed. Stubbed toe? Why not a little bleeding, just in case? They believe illness comes from imbalanced fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile. If you have too much of any one of them, the solution is usually removal, often violently. You're offered a tincture of crushed beetles and wine to rebalance your energies. You drink it, you vomit. They call this progress. A boy who broke his leg last week now walks with a stick and a permanent limp. He is now known as the one who didn't heal properly. There is no pity, only observations. Infections? They're just another test of endurance. If your wound turns green, you're encouraged to rub it with salt. If it smells bad, you're told to let it air out. If you die, Spartan. And that's what matters. The concept of germs does not exist. Germs are invisible. Invisible things are for Athenians and cowards. You have lice. Everyone does. Scratching is as common as breathing. There are no calms, no ointments, just shared misery, and the vague hope that your lice might one day migrate to someone else. You've heard of Asclepions, grand healing temples where priests use herbs, chants, and dream interpretation. But those are for elites, for warriors, for winners, not for boys who can't stop coughing. When someone loses a limb, which happens more often than you'd like, there's a short ceremony, not for the loss, but for the survival. They're given a day off sometimes, then expected to return, hopping if necessary. The only scientific procedure you witness is trepanation. The drilling of a hole into the skull to release evil spirits. It's only done in extreme cases. You see it once. The patient screams until he doesn't. You're told he died happy, freed from demons. The man who performed it is the same one who treated your finger. You're feeling much better now. There's also a plant-based remedy passed around. Boiled poppy mixed with honey. It dulls pain, makes the world blurry. The older boys call it the gift of not caring. It's only used when the bleeding doesn't stop and the howling keeps people awake at night. No one expects perfect health. They expect resilience. The body is a tool, a weapon, a temporary meat shield for your soul. And if it breaks, well, sharpen the next part. By nightfall, you're coughing less. Not because you've improved, but because you've simply accepted the noise as part of your soundtrack. The scar on your hand where the knife slipped is already scabbing. You lick it. It tastes like salt in the past. You are learning to heal like a Spartan, slowly, poorly, and with no complaints. Congratulations. You have survived medicine. Barely. You've made it through another day of surprise punches, suspicious herbal remedies, and moral support in the form of mild public humiliation. Your reward? Dinner. Except calling it dinner is like calling a slap a hug with velocity. Technically accurate, emotionally dishonest. The Spartan evening meal is as bleak as your mood and somehow more brown than anything should be allowed to be. You approach the mess hall. Not a hall, really, more of a dirt circle with logs around a communal fire, and immediately inhale the scent of boiling despair. Ah, the melazomos, black broth. It simmers in a soot-darkened pot, bubbling like something out of an apocalyptic stew dream. The smell? Metallic, bloody, with notes of ash, overboiled hooves, and a ghost of pig that died screaming. You're handed a cracked clay bowl and a splintered wooden spoon. Neither is clean. Neither has ever been clean. Cleanliness is for people who think dirt carries disease, not character. You ladle the liquid into your bowl. It's not thick, but not thin either. It has the consistency of regret, the color of a battlefield after a drizzle. Small shreds of pork drift like sunken survivors of a culinary shipwreck. A lone olive bobs to the surface and stares at you. You eat anyway, because in Sparta, food doesn't nourish. It tests you. You take your first sip. It hits the back of your throat like someone boiled rust in brine. There's a vague aftertaste of vinegar and bone marrow. And something else. Is it garlic? Or a long-dead hope? You ask no questions. You drink. The bread is harder than the heel of your sandal. Flat, unleavened, and textured like it was baked under a rock. Because it was. You try to chew it. You try again. It does not yield. You eventually soak it in broth until it turns into a grimy sponge and slurp it down. Tonight, you're lucky. There's a turnip. Not a slice of turnip. Not a dish made with turnips. A whole, unsalted, unseasoned boiled turnip. It tastes like damp wood and lost dreams. You eat it like it's a gift from Zeus himself. Sometimes there are beans. Not tonight. The bean barrel is empty. One boy found a rock in his bowl and declared it the most flavorful thing he's had all week. Dessert? What's that? The closest you've come to a treat was when someone smuggled in a fig once. It was dried, mostly pit. Everyone got to smell it. The boy was whipped for hoarding. You sit around the fire, bowls in lap, eating in silence. Conversation isn't forbidden. It's just discouraged. Talking might lead to feelings. Feelings might lead to softness. And softness? The ultimate crime. Occasionally one of the older boys tells a joke. It's never funny. But everyone laughs, mostly to show they still have working teeth. One of the younger boys starts crying mid-meal. He's homesick, or he has a loose molar, or he's just realized what dinner means here. He's taken away to wash dishes in a freezing stream as punishment for leaking emotions. You finish your broth. The bowl has a chip now. That's okay. Everything in Sparta is chipped, bruised, or both. There's no washing up. You wipe the bowl with a corner of your tunic. The same tunic you sleep in, bleed in, and cry into. Multitasking. Then you help extinguish the fire. There's no warmth after sundown. Warmth is for other city-states. Athenians, perhaps. Or Persians. You are not them. You are a Spartan boy. Warmth is a myth whispered by cowards. Sometimes, food is stored in clay jars buried in the ground. Preservation? Pickling in brine, or salting beyond recognition. If it's meat, it's jerky. If it's vegetables, it's whatever vegetables become after dying twice. There are stories of feasts, real feasts in temples or during festivals. Roasted lamb, honey cakes, spiced wine. You've never any of it. Those are for full citizens, warriors returning from campaigns. Not you. Not yet. Not yet. You dream of cheese, not real cheese, an imagined one. Soft, salty, warmed by the sun and spread on soft bread. It's a fantasy so decadent that you wake up hungry and ashamed. The worst part? You get used to it. Eventually the broth becomes comfort. The bread, a routine. The hunger, a background hum you can almost dance to. They say hunger makes you sharp, fast, focused, but it also makes you a little hollow inside, like your ribs are whispering secrets your ears were never meant to hear. By the end of the meal, your belly is not full. It is occupied, like a foreign army has taken over and is marching slowly toward indigestion. You go to bed not satisfied but resigned. And somehow, you count that as a win. Welcome to the Spartan dinner table. Hope you brought low expectations and strong teeth. As night settles over Sparta, you lie awake on your straw-stuffed mat. Not because you're full of energy, the black broth saw to that, but because sleep is a privilege, and paranoia is the real national pastime. Welcome to the spiritual life of a Spartan schoolboy. Part religion, part surveillance state, part campfire horror stories, all completely inescapable. Let's begin with the gods. You don't worship them so much as try not to offend them. They're always watching. All of them. All the time. Even the ones you forget about. Especially the ones you forget about. Zeus? Yes. King of the gods, dispenser of lightning bolts, lover of, well, pretty much everyone. You say his name with reverence and with caution. The last boy who sneezed during a prayer to Zeus was made to dig latrine holes for a week. You assume the punishment was divinely ordained. Then there's Artemis, the huntress. Big deal in Sparta. Virgin goddess of the wilderness and things that sneak up on you in forests. You offer scraps of meat to her altar before hunts. Never mind that the meat is mostly bone and gristle. It's the thought that counts. Supposedly. You've heard of Apollo, but he's more of a musician-poet type. Not exactly your crowd. Still, when you hear someone hum a tune under their breath during chores, they usually mutter, "For Apollo," as if that will prevent punishment. It won't. Your daily life is wrapped in ritual. Before meals, a whispered blessing. Before training, a quick touch to the ground, then the forehead, then the chest, just in case Ares is listening. Before bed, you recite a chant against nightmares and pray that Morpheus doesn't get creative tonight. The priests, or more often, older boys with a flair for dramatic storytelling, warn constantly of omens. A bird flying in the wrong direction means your next sparring match will end in blood. A strange dog barking at midnight means someone nearby will fall ill. A spilled bowl of water? That's basically a death sentence. Everything is a sign. Everything means something. But what it means? That's always vague enough to justify whatever happens next. Dreams are analyzed. A dream of falling, that's the gods humbling you. A dream of flying, the gods testing your ego. A dream of food, you're probably just hungry, but also maybe a prophecy. No one writes these things down. That would make them facts. And facts are dangerous. Belief, on the other hand, now that's safe. You're encouraged to believe deeply, unquestioningly, and above all, publicly. Because someone is always watching. The Irenes patrol not just for rule-breaking, but for attitude. If you look too smug after a victory, you'll be accused of hubris. If you seem too happy after a loss, disloyalty. If you simply stand quietly in the corner, they'll find a reason to accuse you of witchcraft. Or worse, Athenian sympathies. Whispers are everywhere. Boys tell stories about others being dragged out of their beds at night because they insulted the wrong deity or the wrong instructor. The truth is never clear, which only makes the fear more effective. Punishment comes swiftly and with moral justification. You're not beaten because someone lost their temper. You're beaten because the gods demand discipline. Because discipline builds strength, and strength pleases the gods. There are no secrets in Sparta. If you cry, someone sees. If you speak out of turn, someone hears. If you doubt, even silently, someone will eventually sense it. They won't punish you right away. That would be too easy. Instead, they'll watch. They'll wait. They'll let you dig your own theological grave. And when you finally trip, they'll say, "The gods warned us." There are also the helots, the enslaved majority, who have their own spiritual beliefs, whispered behind closed doors and passed down in lullabies and superstitions. You're told to ignore them. You don't. Their stories are stranger, older, involve ghosts in olive groves and curses on families that steal goats. One tale sticks with you. If you wake up with a cut on your palm, it means a spirit visited in the night and tried to take your soul. But you were too poor, so it left you alone. Comforting. The line between religion and obedience is blurred. You worship the gods because they are powerful. But you also worship your leaders, your instructors, the elders. Their words carry divine weight. Disobedience is not just wrong, it's heresy. There's a festival coming soon. You've been preparing for weeks, not with singing or garlands, but with fasting, silence, and extra spear drills. You're told it's an honor to suffer for the gods. You're beginning to think the gods are a little too into it. On festival day, you'll march barefoot across hot sand, perform dances with military precision, and watch a boy get whipped in public as a test of divine favor. The more he bleeds without crying, the more the gods are pleased. You volunteer. You are not chosen. You're relieved and disappointed at the same time. That's how deep it runs. And when night falls again and you lie there in the dark, the shadows seem to move just a little differently. You hear an owl, sacred to Athena, who you're not supposed to like, but you nod respectfully anyway, just in case. Because in Sparta, faith isn't personal, it's policy. You'd think that after a long day of being emotionally pulverized and nutritionally starved, Sparta would cut you some slack in the form of leisure time. You would be wrong. In most cultures, fun is a category. In Sparta, it's more of a suspicious anomaly, like smiling in a funeral procession. Leisure exists, technically, but only in the same way that poison exists in nature. Rare, dangerous, usually accidental. Let's begin with the laws. Sparta runs on laws the way a ship runs on barnacles, heavily, begrudgingly, and without much enthusiasm for innovation. The laws were supposedly handed down by Lycurgus, the legendary lawgiver, a man so serious he once allegedly starved himself to death to prove a point. That's the vibe. Everything is regulated. Your meals, your clothes, your posture, the angle at which you carry a spear, the volume of your breathing during training. There is a law for it. Your only real escape from the rigid tyranny of daily training is during festivals, which sound promising but are mostly just organized groups suffering with slightly better chanting. Take the Hyacinthia, for example. Part mourning, part military drill, part awkward dance recital in front of elders who critique your form with the intensity of modern Olympic judges. And then there's the Gymnopediae. No, not a celebration of gymnasts. It's a festival where young men, you included, lucky thing, dance naked in the sun to commemorate past victories and instill discipline. That's right, sunburned, nude choreography. Nothing says cultural enrichment like synchronized squatting while sweating in front of your neighbor's grandma. Fun, right? Okay, maybe there's some fun. Sometimes, after your daily regime of emotional erosion, you gather with other boys and play a game of episkiros. It's a kind of proto-rugby meets fight club, played with a ball, mud, and a complete disregard for bone integrity. The rules are unclear. The goal is unclear. Injuries? Very clear. You once saw a boy lose a tooth and declare it a blessing from Ares. That's the level of enthusiasm here. Then there's Kottabos, a game imported from less repressed city-states like Athens, where boys try to fling the dregs of their wine cups at targets. Sparta, predictably, removed the wine and the cups and replaced them with rocks and a shouted moral lesson. Still, on some evenings, rare ones, when the sky is a soft gray and the air is mercifully warm, the older boys will sit around a fire and tell stories. Not bedtime stories. Cautionary tales. Like the one about the boy who tried to escape Sparta and ended up so emotionally overwhelmed by freedom, he cried himself into unconsciousness. Or the tale of a helot who tried to sing and was made to do it for 12 straight hours as punishment. At the end, he never sang again. Powerful stuff. There's also gossip, a real pastime. You learn to speak in half-truths and raised eyebrows. Someone's tunic is slightly cleaner than usual. Maybe their family bribed an official. Someone limped during drills. Perhaps they were cursed, or faking it, or both. You speculate, you whisper, you theorize, but never loud enough for Irene to hear. That's a punishable offense. Not the gossiping, the being bad at it. Public punishments double as entertainment. If someone steals bread, they don't just get a slap on the wrist. They're marched through the training yard with a sign around their neck that says glutton, and made to eat the bread in front of everyone, slowly, while we all chant things like, swallow your shame. Once a month, there's a ritual flogging, not for crimes, for character development. Volunteers, or the volunteered, are whipped in front of a crowd to test their endurance. People cheer, bets are placed, tears are judged. Yes, this is your leisure time. Music exists, but again, Sparta doesn't do joy. The music is militaristic, all drums, pipes, and chants. Songs about glorious deaths, honorable ancestors, and how fun it is to march for 18 hours in the rain. No mood music. The law even dictates your haircut. You must grow your hair out as you age, but you must not style it like an Athenian. You may braid it, but if you add anything decorative, someone will call you soft. And in Sparta, being soft is one step above being dead, and one step below being an Athenian. So what's left? There's watching the sun set over the Taygetus Mountains. There's lying under a tree and pretending you're just a regular goat herder with hopes and dreams. There's throwing pebbles into a stream and imagining they're your problems, sinking away. Occasionally you laugh. Not because something is funny, but because your brain is reaching for oxygen in the form of joy. A fleeting moment where someone slips on goat dung or accidentally refers to an instructor as mother. You smile, quietly, then immediately return to your blank expression before someone notices. Because leisure is allowed, technically. But too much of it? That's weakness. And weakness is death. Let's begin with a bold, revolutionary idea. Love. Now let's toss that idea in a pit and cover it with spears. Romance in Sparta isn't just rare, it's practically illegal. Affection is not encouraged. Emotional expression is seen as soft. And soft gets you flogged, married off without fanfare, or ignored until you rot behind a pile of discarded sandals. You're a schoolboy after all. And schoolboys don't flirt. Schoolboys fight. Schoolboys march. Schoolboys are told from the moment they can stand upright that love is something Athenians write about in their sad little plays. Here in Sparta, you don't have time for longing gazes. You've got mandatory foot inspections and rice ration math to worry about. And yet, biology doesn't read the Spartan law code. By your teenage years, the strange fluttering in your chest doesn't always mean an undiagnosed parasitic infection. Sometimes it's something else. A blush when someone braids your hair just right. A sideways glance in the practice yard that lingers a bit too long. But what do you do with that? Answer: absolutely nothing. If you're caught sneaking off to meet a girl, or anyone really, you risk not only a punishment from your elders, but the very serious crime of disrupting the discipline of the agoge, which, in Sparta, ranks somewhere between treason and dancing with enthusiasm. And so, romantic feelings are repressed, pressed into tiny, reeking corners of your psyche, where they sit like forgotten cheese in a leather pouch, occasionally leaking out in dreams or moody stares at sunsets. That said, relationships do exist. Kind of. Marriage, for example, is a practical arrangement. You're expected to marry at 30, after finishing your tour of duty. Women usually marry younger, but in a strange twist, Spartan women are more independent than most in the ancient world. They can own land. They can speak their minds. They can even wrestle you to the ground in public if you insult their goat-milking technique, which makes courtship complicated. In fact, many Spartan marriages begin with what can only be described as ritualized kidnapping. Yes, really. Here's how it works. The groom-to-be abducts the bride. She's prepared in secret by her family, head shaved, dressed in a man's cloak, and hidden away in a dark room. The groom sneaks in, spends the night, and then returns to his communal barracks the next morning like nothing happened. This continues, night after night, in secret, until the marriage is official. No dinners, no courtship walks by the Eurotas River, just stealthy visits and silent goodbyes before dawn. You'd think this would make romance bloom. It doesn't. Most Spartan couples barely know each other at first. They speak in whispers. They touch hands briefly, if at all. Love, as in tender, foolish, vulnerable love, is dangerous. It softens your focus. It distracts from war. So relationships stay practical. Children are expected. Affection is optional. Intimacy, that depends on whether you can sneak into the barracks courtyard without getting spotted by your instructor, who, incidentally, is trained to detect affection the way bloodhounds detect rabbits. Some relationships do blossom, but quietly. In poems no one reads aloud. In stolen glances during training exercises. In shared bread crusts and bruises compared in candlelight. And of course, in the older boy, younger boy mentorship system, which walks a fine line between education and Spartan-style companionship. Let's not unpack that too hard. As for flirtation, forget it. There's no blushing behind fans here. No flowers left at doorsteps. The most romantic thing you've witnessed is a boy cleaning another boy's sandals without being asked. And even that was followed by a lecture on how emotions lead to sloppiness in spear throwing. There are no songs about love. No myths that praise romantic affection without first coating it in tragedy or warfare. The only story you ever hear told with misty-eyed nostalgia is the tale of two warriors who died back-to-back in battle, refusing to leave each other behind. That, in Sparta, is considered passion. Just add spears. By now, you've trained yourself to expect nothing, to squash the fluttering, to ignore the ache in your chest that isn't entirely malnutrition. But one evening, under a red-streaked sky, someone you've quietly admired all year, same training group, strong jaw, decent at jokes, shares a blanket with you for warmth. No words, just two bodies huddled against the wind, silent, tense, electric. You don't speak of it again. You don't need to. Because in Sparta, even tenderness must wear armor. There's a rumor, possibly started by a drunk Corinthian, that childhood is supposed to be a time of innocence, imagination, and sticky hands full of stolen fruit. Sparta disagrees. Here, childhood is a logistical inconvenience. You exist to be molded, sharpened, and eventually launched like a spear into battle. You're not coddled, you're calibrated. And frankly, it's amazing you made it past the first inspection. You see, newborns in Sparta are subjected to a state-sponsored baby check. No pressure. Elders examine your tiny, squishy frame for strength, symmetry, and potential usefulness to the military-industrial complex that is your homeland. If you're deemed weak, malformed, or otherwise unsuitable, you're, how shall we put this gently, returned to sender via the nearest chasm. If you pass that initial test, congratulations, you've earned the privilege of childhood in Sparta, which mostly involves the removal of everything that makes childhood tolerable. Toys? No. Lullabies? Don't be absurd. Soft blankets? Only if you count the communal horsehair sackcloth infested with lice. Your first years are spent under the watchful glare of your mother, a woman who, unlike the rosy-cheeked caricatures from other cultures, has biceps and opinions. Spartan women are famously formidable. They don't cradle, they critique. When you cry, they tell you to toughen up. When you fall, they tell you to get back up. When you dawdle, they tell you Athenian children dawdle. And that stings. At age 7, you're inducted into the agoge, Sparta's state-run school of discipline, starvation, and constructive humiliation. From this point forward, you belong to Sparta. Your family might wave at you from across the training field, but don't count on hugs. Hugs are weakness in fabric form. Your days as a child are gone, replaced by drills, chants, and being woken up at dawn by a boy who is also 7 but somehow already has dead eyes. Learning to read? Yes, but only enough to follow military orders and insult your enemies in poetic meter. Literacy beyond that is discouraged. No one wants you turning into a philosopher. That's how you end up questioning authority or writing plays about feelings. And Sparta cannot have that. What you do learn is pain, in all its varieties. Physical pain, from running barefoot across gravel. Emotional pain, from being outshined by a friend. Existential pain, from realizing your entire personality is being stripped down and rebuilt to serve as a cog in a machine made of six-pack abs and war hymns. You're trained to steal food, but here's the twist. If you get caught, you're punished not for the theft, but for getting caught. This teaches cunning, and also paranoia. It's like a school project designed by Machiavelli. Oh, and you're expected to rat out your peers, not out of malice, out of civic duty. Reporting infractions is seen as an act of loyalty. So everyone becomes a little spy, a little surveillance state in sandals. You sleep in barracks with other boys. You bathe rarely. You fight daily. You form bonds, grudgingly. You suppress tears violently. You itch constantly. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you begin to wonder if other children, elsewhere in the Greek world, are spending their mornings playing games and making daisy chains. You hate them, of course. But you also wonder. Discipline is reinforced through humiliation. Get something wrong? Recite your failure aloud while others jeer. Miss a target during training? Carry it on your back for an hour while chanting, "I am burdened by my shame." It's like theater, but no one claps. At 12, you're considered nearly grown. Your training intensifies. You might be assigned a mentor, an older boy who teaches you how to hold a spear, control your posture, and never show emotion unless it's battle rage. There's a lot of gray area in that last category. You're taught to survive with nothing, to live in the wild for days at a time, barefoot and barely clothed, eating insects and sleeping in hollow logs. This is not a punishment. It's enrichment. By 14, you have the gait of a man, the eyes of a hawk, and the digestive system of a barnyard animal. You've broken bones, set them yourself, and probably won't tell anyone about it unless they directly ask. Even then, you'll say something cryptic like, "Pain is temporary, shame is forever." Emotionally, you are a bundle of contradictions. You crave praise but flinch at affection. You compete with your closest friends but would die for them in an instant. You know how to kill a man in 6 moves, but don't know how to say, "I miss you" to your mother. Eventually, you'll be tested, thrown into the wilderness with a knife and told to survive. Or worse, told to not be noticed. That's the final exam. Stealth, endurance, obedience. And if you pass, you graduate, not into adulthood, not into freedom, into more training, into the army, into the endless machinery of Sparta's war state. Childhood, it turns out, was just the prequel, the trailer for a much bloodier film, one that doesn't have a happy ending. In most cultures, animals are companions, or pests, or dinner. In Sparta, they can be all three, sometimes in the same day. Let's start with the obvious, Spartan dogs. The Molossian hound is a beast worthy of fear and begrudging respect, strong-jawed, sharp-eyed, trained to chase intruders and wild boar with equal fervor. If you're lucky enough to grow up near one, it's not exactly a pet. It's more like a furry colleague with occasional bloodlust and better instincts than half your mess hall. If you want something soft and snuggly, may we interest you in disappointment? Because in Sparta, affection toward animals, like affection toward anything, is considered suspicious. You might care about a hound, you might admire a warhorse, but you do not coddle, you do not coo. That's Athenian behavior, and your training has conditioned you to react to Athenians with a mixture of pity and intense abdominal clenching. That said, Spartan boys sometimes adopt small creatures, a wounded bird perhaps, or a stray cat that hunts mice behind the bathhouse. You won't admit you like them. You won't name them anything sentimental. You might call your bird Claw or Meatbeak, just to deflect suspicion. But deep down, there's something tender there. A spark of boyhood stubbornly refusing to be stomped out by 1,000 laps around the training track. Now let's talk about vermin. Because if there's one thing that truly blurs the line between friend and foe in your life, it's the endless procession of scuttling, scratching, parasitic guests who occupy your barracks, cloak, and undergarments. Lice are a way of life. They don't visit, they move in. You learn to pinch them between your fingernails while listening to your instructor bark about posture. it becomes background noise. An endless, rhythmic itch that defines the texture of Spartan childhood. Fleas, equally prolific, are harder to catch but even more enthusiastic. They leap from straw mattress to straw mattress like deranged little gymnasts. You stop swatting at them after a while. It's not surrender, it's strategy. If you appear unbothered, maybe the fleas will get bored and move on to someone less stoic. Rats, of course, skitter beneath the floorboards and through the kitchens. You admire them, in a way. Their tenacity, their survival instincts. Some boys whisper that a rat can teach you more about guerrilla warfare than any instructor. But if you're caught feeding one, you'll do extra laps, and probably get a lecture on how rodent affection weakens the soul. You share your world with chickens. Not fluffy pets. Utilitarian egg dispensers and emergency protein. They cluck judgmentally from corners of courtyards, leaving droppings that everyone pretends not to see. You chase them for training. You pluck them for dinner. No one cries when they vanish, except maybe you, once, quietly behind a water barrel. Now and then you encounter pigs, the grease-slick, mud-happy beasts raised for sacrifice or sustenance. You admire their absolute lack of shame, their willingness to wallow, their ability to snort in public and get away with it. You, too, have considered snorting in public, but you fear consequences. And then finally, there's the horse. Rare, revered, mostly out of reach. Spartan cavalry is not as famous as its infantry, but the presence of a horse in your world is like catching a glimpse of divine favor. Glossy flank, braided mane, eyes like burning coals. You imagine riding one, just once, galloping away from the dust, the discipline, the dinner made of boiled roots. But you never ask, you never touch, you just watch and you move on. So where does this leave you? Somewhere between itching, admiring, and occasionally bonding with creatures who don't judge you for crying in your sleep. You don't talk about it, of course. You don't tell anyone that you whispered your fears to a pigeon perched on the barracks roof, or that you stroked a lamb's ear after training until your heartbeat slowed. You are a Spartan. You fear nothing, except vulnerability. But even warriors need witnesses. And sometimes the only ones listening are covered in fur, feathers, or fleas. The heavens above Sparta are not merciful. They are not generous. They are not your friend. The climate, like everything else in your daily existence, seems designed to test your resolve, your nerves, and your pitiful sense of comfort. Let's begin with summer, because that's when the gods apparently decide to microwave the Peloponnese. Spartan summer arrives like a slap to the face with a sun-drenched sandal. The sky turns into a pale, pitiless dome. Not a cloud in sight, just an infinite, unblinking blue eye that stares down and dares you to collapse. And you will. Just not out loud. Training continues, of course. You jog over fields that have been baking since the last war. You grip wooden spears so hot they sear your palms. The air tastes like dust and disappointment. Your tunic, made of something breathable in theory, transforms into a damp rag glued to your spine. There is no sunscreen, no shade. You want hydration? There's a communal clay jug of tepid water, flavored with hints of backwash and wild thyme. Refreshing. The instructors yell louder in the heat, as though their rage can blot out the sun. You suspect they enjoy this, watching you try to maintain formation while your brain slowly stews in its helmet. And the insects. Oh, the insects. Mosquitoes arrive in squadrons, buzzing into your ears like tiny airborne hoplites with a blood vendetta. Flies cluster in your armpits like they've been invited. There's a beetle living under your toenail. You've named him Achilles, and he's the most emotionally stable relationship you've had this month. Then comes autumn, which Sparta treats less like a season and more like an awkward cough between heat stroke and hypothermia. The air becomes sharp. Not cold, exactly, just indifferent. Morning drills leave your fingers numb, but by midday you're sweating again and regretting every layer of wool your mother made you wear. Your cloak smells like mildew. Your sandals squelch. Nothing dries. Everything chafes. Leaves fall, but not in a poetic Athenian look at the passage of time sort of way. More like, this tree has given up. The olive groves go silent. The wind gets that wet, sullen quality that makes you feel like you're being followed. The instructors say it builds character. Then winter arrives, and this is when Sparta gets truly creative with its cruelty. Forget fluffy snowflakes and steaming bowls of broth. You're lucky if your porridge isn't frozen to the bowl. The barracks are not insulated. The cloaks are thin. The wind howls like a banshee that failed its audition for the chorus. And you are still expected to train. You wake up with frost in your eyelashes. Your breath fogs the air like an omen. You try to run, but your toes mutiny halfway through the warm-up lap. Ice creeps down the back of your neck, as if the gods are dropping handfuls of frozen disdain straight into your spine. If you ask for extra firewood, you are mocked. If you complain, you are assigned more laps, barefoot across frosted mud. The pain is clarifying, almost spiritual. It's said that Spartan boys don't fear the cold, that they embrace it. That's only half true. You tolerate it, you endure it. But you also fantasize, quite vividly, about warm caves and the hypothetical invention of thermal undergarments. Then there's spring, the great tease. It arrives subtly, like a rumor of joy. A breeze that doesn't hurt, a patch of grass that isn't dead. You let yourself believe things might get better. You inhale deeply and swear the air smells like herbs instead of sweat and regret. And then the rain starts. Not gentle rain. No. This is the kind of rain that seeps into everything. Your boots, your soul, the one good blanket you were saving for festival week. It turns the training yard into a pit of slop where spears slip, boys fall, and instructors bellow curses that invent entirely new gods to offend. Lightning splits the sky. Thunder shakes the barracks. The older boys tell stories of warriors struck down for disrespecting Zeus. You laugh nervously and hope the god of sky-related tantrums doesn't hear you. Eventually, the cycle begins again. You know the sequence by heart now. Sweat, rot, chill, damp, despair, repeat. And here's the thing, you survive. Not comfortably, not gracefully, but you survive. Because in Sparta, the weather is just another opponent. You don't fight it, you don't flee from it. You absorb it, like pain, like hunger, like the deep longing for a climate that doesn't want to kill you just for stepping outside. You are not a boy. You are a storm-battered twig with strong opinions about sandals. And somehow, you'll do it all again tomorrow. The sun sinks behind Mount Taygetus, painting the stone city in shades of rust and resignation. The dust finally settles. Your muscles ache with the sour weight of training. Your stomach grumbles. Your feet, half blister, half callous, drag back toward the barracks. And the day? It ends like all Spartan days, quietly, grimly, and with the lingering sense that you've survived something, though you're not sure what. You chew on something leathery. It's probably bread. It might be punishment. Spartan meals are more symbolic than nourishing, a triumph of discipline over desire. Tonight's black broth is a slurry of pig's blood, vinegar, and existential disappointment. You drink it anyway because hunger is louder than your dignity. Around you, boys cough in unison, a morbid lullaby. One has a fever. Another clutches his side like something's ruptured. Nobody calls for help. There's no physician on hand, only rumor and ritual. If someone gets worse, the instructors might rub him with olive oil, mutter a prayer to Asclepius, and hand him a spear to fight through it. If that fails, well, the afterlife is just another battlefield. You've heard the stories of boys who trained until their lungs collapsed, of infections that bloomed beneath the skin like ink on parchment, of a friend who took a misstep on the rocks and cracked his skull like an overripe fig. He was gone by morning. No funeral. Just a nod and an extra portion of lentils for the rest of you, assuming lentils are even available that day. Disease is the shadow that trains beside you. It's the cough that lingers, the wound that festers, the chill that never quite leaves your chest. It is quiet, invisible, and deeply unimpressed by your abs. There are no plagues here, not in the dramatic Athenian sense, just the slow grind of malnourishment, exhaustion, and the unrelenting grindstone of toughness. You are your own apothecary, your immune system, a flailing child with a wooden shield. And yet, death isn't feared here, not like in other cities. In Sparta, death is a kind of graduation. You either die with your shield or on it. Even the boys are expected to carry that expectation like they carry their tunics, rough, unwashed, and too tight around the neck. You lay down on your straw bedding. It smells like mildew and old feet. Someone nearby is snoring violently. Someone else is murmuring the names of gods in their sleep. You close your eyes and dream of simpler things. Olives that aren't bruised, sandals that fit, a mother's hug that doesn't double as a motivational slap. But the dreams never last. A night warden shakes you awake. It's your turn for watch. You drag yourself outside into the moonlight. The barracks behind you creaks and groans. The wind hums like a mother who's forgotten the words. You stand there, spear in hand, watching for enemies that probably don't exist. A fox darts through the shadows. You envy its freedom, its ability to disappear into the wild. Behind you, someone coughs again, louder this time. You glance up at the stars, not for hope, but for context. You are small, cold, slightly infected, but still standing, and that, in Sparta, is a kind of victory. You'll do it all again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next, until you are deemed ready to join the phalanx, to die gloriously, or to rot slowly like the rest of the tough, tender, thoroughly traumatized boys raised under the iron sky. But tonight, you're only half dead, which means you're still winning. So sleep, Spartan. If your straw doesn't jab you too hard and your cough doesn't worsen and the rats don't nibble your toes, you might even wake up tomorrow, which is either a blessing or a cruel cosmic joke. Either way, good night.